I'm trying to make
Everyone, we're live with my first bet and two very special guests tonight joining us. Just hoping that the internet holds up because, my goodness, this lockdown period, the one thing it has been plagued by is bad internet connections. I can tell you from some online poker games that I've been playing. But anyway, let me introduce the guests. And I saw Neil Andrews' head pop up there because I remember in his house he used to have a poker room. But first of all, let me say hello to your lovely wife, Hlohlo. Hlohlo, great to have you on the show. And congratulations on not only marrying Neil, because you've married him since I last saw him, but also the family you've had together.
Thanks a lot. You should be congratulating him on marrying me.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, no, I think you're right about that.
I thought about it today, actually, because her company she works for is called We Find Talent. And I mean, she did find talent, so she just married it.
I was going to ask, and Hlohlo, very quickly, what do you do then? You find talent. What sort of talent are you looking for?
So we're a generalist recruitment agency. So definitely not broadcasting talent, but more your business talent in all areas. So we go from manufacturing to engineering to anything, banking, finance, general law, across the board.
Okay, excellent. And Neil, yourself, obviously everyone knows, presenter at SuperSport. I mean, unprecedented times we're in now with no sport. I mean, you know me as a sports bettor, you can imagine what I'm going through. And I can only imagine what you're going through as a punter, presenter, MC. I mean, it must be quite something staying at home. But I mean, you do have a few kids to keep you busy there.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, as anybody knows, I guess, I don't think the world probably is going to return to the way it was before. Some of it is good stuff. I mean, you know, you've seen people who follow me on Twitter will have seen me posting a lot of spending time with our family. Actually, about an hour ago when we were chatting, we were saying how are our kids going to cope if and when lockdowns end and we go back to being something close to being normal, because the truth is our kids, particularly Brighton, who's 6, and Noah, who's 2, have seen so much of us that they're actually also going to take some kind of adjusting, because they're going to expect to see dad all day, every day. And of course, if that doesn't happen, it'll be some adjustment. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, none of us really know how this whole thing is going to pan out and how it's going to affect us all. So interesting times. I think there's a Chinese proverb that says, may you live in interesting times. Well, we're certainly living it, and that's for sure.
We're certainly, and quite apt that it was a Chinese proverb as well, I guess, there. But Neil, the ramifications on the sport, on the sporting world, I mean, the big one everyone's talking about on social media, and I know you're a Spurs fan and that, but what is going to happen with the English Premier League? Because there's all sorts of talk about condensing it. And then if they can't finish the season, or if they can't, finish in any way, what decision gets made? Of course, you've got the one camp that are saying, well, Liverpool, they've done everything, let them have the title. But then the ramifications look down to the relegation spots, and all of a sudden you say, well, is it fair to relegate a team on sort of goal difference when they haven't completed the season? What do you think's going to happen, and maybe what do you think should happen?
I have no idea at all what's going to happen. And you're right, because to me, it's not so much about Liverpool, because Liverpool will win. If they resume, they'll win. And even if they don't resume, they deserve to win. I don't think anybody can argue that. But you're right, the bottom clubs, someone like a Norwich but let's take Norwich, for example. I mean, mathematically, they could still get out of it. So who are we to say, oh, well, they're going to get beaten here and beaten there, and they won't get the points? I mean, if they haven't played the games, then it's a presumption. And I think more of a presumption than it would be in Liverpool's case. So, but I don't know. I mean, there might be, who knows? They could end up going to the European Court of Arbitration. I mean, someone like a Norwich, if they say you are relegated, and say, but hang on a minute, we didn't complete the season. So it could get a little ugly. It could get nasty. I don't know. And of course, it's not just about England. It's about Italy. It's about particularly Italy, which is a great season. What's been happening there with Inter Milan and obviously Juventus and all of the top Italian sides. So, and then Champions League. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting times. And I wouldn't even begin to hazard a guess, because I don't think anybody really knows. And that's true of all sports, not just the Premier League.
I think, people in power, in decision-making positions have had a very difficult time across the board in terms of sport.
Yeah, it's really tough. It's one of those things. It's like there's no right or wrong decisions almost. I mean, it's a bit like, but if you look at our president, Ramaphosa, and I mean, he is getting, I think, well-deserved plaudits for his decisions that he's made. But the reality is you're going to make a decision that some people are going to agree with. And there's going to be a lot of people who are going to say you're making the wrong decision. In this case, saying, like the cure is worse than the disease type of thing. So it's the same thing for those football things. And I guess just for me, I'm not a Liverpool fan, but I've been so impressed with them the last 2 years. I just feel it'll be absolutely heartbreaking for them if they can't bank this title after all these years. And I know a lot of Liverpool fans, and I don't even want to be around those guys if that happens.
Yeah. I think although, even if they don't get the title, I mean, we won't go down in the record books, but I think even Manchester United fans who obviously don't like Liverpool fans at all probably concede. If you get them one-on-one, they'll concede that Liverpool deserve to get it. But who knows? But the problem is that it's going to push everything out. And as I said earlier on, so it's all very well England completing, but if other European leagues don't complete, then what's going to happen to Champions League? What's going to happen to Europa League? When do you restart everything?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I haven't. To be honest with you, I think the last, maybe what are we on lockdown 26 or something like that? I think the last 20 days, I just gave up trying to follow what's going on all of those European. I look at the big announcements. Obviously the Masters moved, the Vodacom Durban July is out to the end of July, so I try and look at that. But nobody really knows, I guess.
Yeah, Neil Jeffrey joining us on Facebook. So just to mention, we are live on Facebook and YouTube. So guys, you're free to make comments there. And he does make the comment that we were just discussing about teams in the relegation zone. But Neil, let's get into the betting side of things. I mean, I've known you for quite a bit of, I think in 2009, we did the Betting World Show together. So you not only love your sport, but you do love your punting, you love your horses. Where did it all start for you? Early memories of betting?
So if my mother was still here, she will tell you that from a very, very young age, she was concerned. And as it's turned out, she had very good reason to be concerned because it's been a long, hard slog as a punter. But she always said that it skipped a generation, the gambling bug, if you want to call it that. My grandfather, we could spend about 8 one-hour editions on going through his stories. But he was, in very short nutshell, he was Scottish, and he because of his punting and other irregularities, he basically was the black sheep of the family. He was thrown out of Scotland, and he had to relocate to England to try and make a name for himself or find a winner. And he spent much of his life. He wasn't so much as a gambler as he was just an interesting character. So that kind of nature skipped a generation, and then she saw signs in me.
That's what you say about yourself.
What, that it skipped a generation?
No, I'm not so much a gambler. I'm just an interesting character. What? Lies.
Yeah. So it started when I was in the UK, and I would have been about 8 years of age. It was Red Rum. You'll probably remember the great steeplechase Red Rum, who won. He won 3 Aintree Grand Nationals, and his first Grand National, which I think off the top of my head was 1972 or 73, it might have been 73. But I had 50p each way on a horse called Crisp, who was the top weight, and it was written by Richard Pittman, who went on to be a presenter, actually, oddly enough. And Jenny Pittman, his sister, was a very good trainer. But anyway, Crisp was literally a whole fence in front. Now at Aintree, the fences are 200, 300 meters apart. But the weight told, and he actually stopped and he could barely walk in the end. He was so exhausted, this horse, because he carried top weight. He was actually an Australian chaser, and Red Rum caught him on the line. Anyway, apparently I cried for days because I had 50p each way, and it looked like he was home and hosed. So I think it was probably in the blood before that, but that would be my first loss of many.
Yeah, it's funny. You'd think if you lose your first bet that you won't come back for more, but in actual fact, seems to just bring you back. And a lot of the people I've been speaking to about betting stories, myself included, a lot of your great memories are actually losses. You know, you actually don't, you remember the wins, but a lot of the ones are the ones that you think you should. I mean, you'll know, just quickly to hop on me for a second, 2011 France v New Zealand in the World Cup final. I mean, I was all over the French for about 2 years, and then I remember a certain rugby presenter, I believe, was also on the French that day, and if I recall, you stood them a bit. But I mean, that's the type of thing I'll remember that for the rest of my life. But I may not remember a bet that I won last year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you do. But that, punters generally are the salt of the earth, so they remember these things. I mean, let's be honest, winning's a bit boring if you're winning all the time. You want to have those close defeats to make the wins when they do come all the more sweeter.
No, that's it. There's definitely something to be said for the thrill of it as well, and the thrill of taking on the bookmaker as well. But Flo, let me go to you, because I know you're not a big punter, but Neil did mention a story of yours on Twitter, and we'll come back to the racing now. Tell us about your first bet, your first sports bet ever.
So it was when South Africa played Japan. What was the game? It was the
95. It was a group game. 95.
95.
2015.
No, sorry, 95. Old age.
Wow.
Just dated myself again.
So I woke up in the morning and I said, "Is Japan playing South Africa today?" And Neil said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, Japan's going to win." And he's like, "No, they'll never win. I mean, the odds are against him." And I said, "Japan is going to win. I have a feeling." So I said, here's R5. Take this R5, take it to the totes and put a bet on Japan winning. So I don't know what you did and why I ended up with so much money, but still.
Yes, you see, this is where the thing. So Chloe said, and she's right. I did say, don't be ridiculous. They've got no chance. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking, if this is a premonition, right, then maybe Japan will beat the spread. So I was already thinking, the spread. So I quickly went online to see what the spread was. Now, off the top of my head, I think it was 40 points or something.
It was 39, 40 points. Yeah.
There you go, 39, 40. So in my mind, I was thinking, no, never mind Japan win. They can't win. That's impossible. But what I can do is make money if Japan beat the spread. Yeah. But obviously, Hlohlo was unaware of all of that.
I had no clue because I don't understand the language. I don't understand anything that's got
Japanese
to do with
language.
it. No, that's
Yeah. So what happened is, but as you would appreciate, Brent, I mean, I can't go to my bookmaker and put R5 on.
Right? Bet on
well, can't. Exactly. So I'm thinking to myself, like, dude, don't worry, I'm going to make a lot of money on the spread. So I'll just put 200 Rand on. And they were a very big price. But then what actually happened was, and this was, I watched the first half at the tote, didn't I?
No, we watched it together.
No, but the first half.
Oh, yeah.
So during the first half, I was watching, and obviously Japan were quite competitive from the start, and the bookmakers never changed the odds. So they never changed the spread, or very little. It was down to 36, 37. So every time I was thinking, my wife's had a premonition here, and she's actually spot on. So I kept punting them. I never stopped until it got to half time. And then I thought I better go home. So by the time I got home,
I was grinning like a Cheshire cat.
She was grinning like a Cheshire cat. And then, of course, I wasn't even thinking. Even then, I wasn't thinking until the last time I went over that you went. But when did you?
I was jumping. Like literally, the whole country was in mourning, and I was like up and down celebrating. I was so happy.
That's pretty much the opposite of me when Yanni de Beer kicked all those drop goals years ago, because I was the only guy in the country on England, and de Beer kicked those 5 drop goals. I was watching with mates, and of course they were, we were still students in those days, rubbing my head, and I mean I was in all sorts of trouble. But I guess that's the beauty of sports betting. But let's return to the track, Neil. You've given me a couple of names to mention just to trigger a few stories. The first one here, Gay Shenanigan.
Yeah, so Gay Shenanigan is an interesting story because Gay Shenanigan was the first horse I owned. I can safely say that now. Back in the day, I couldn't because I didn't officially own it because obviously you used to have colours. So I was racing under the lap, which you're not supposed to do.
I'm so glad this is the name of the horse. I thought it was a story that you hadn't told me.
I wanted to invite Terry Payne.
Not that it's visionary.
I can't take it anywhere. I apologize. Yes, and it was felt like that gay shenanigan. It is Irish, like you have a gay shenanigan. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So it was trained by Mike Schulman, actually, and Kenny Michelle rode it, and it had run once or twice. It had the 2 prep runs, and then it was running in a race, and I backed it. So Jahan Malherbe, who I was Jahan's assistant, maybe some people don't know that, that's how I started. I was a horse racing commentator. He said to me, "Well, you could call the race, John." So I got into the hot seat, obviously, with the binoculars, and called the race. And Gay Shenanigan, it was about 8-1. But the thing about it is that being my own horse, and it was a maiden plate at Milnerton, was where Milnerton was running. But if you listen to the commentary, it's ridiculous because it actually sounds like the Epsom Derby. I mean, so if you're watching it, you're thinking, what the hell is this commentator going on and on about? But I screamed as though it had won the Melbourne Cup or something, screaming, "Hey, shenanigans!" And actually, you can hear Jahan laughing in the background. It's just going, because it actually was ridiculous. A Gay Shenanigan was, I had a few rand to win on it, but it was the thrill, obviously, of the horse winning. But I couldn't tell anybody because, I couldn't say it was my horse because it wasn't in the card and you weren't supposed to own it anyway.
It's like, I must say that's a brilliant story, calling your own horse where no one knows it's your horse. So it'll certainly be. Funny enough, my first ownership of a horse was to the African Betting Clan guys, and I had a share. And it was also around about the time we met. And my very first time I bought into the horse, it won first time out at 16-1. And I remember being interviewed afterwards and saying, "Horse racing's an easy game. I'm the only owner with a 100% record." After that, all I saw was dentist bills and all sorts of things coming. Eventually, needless to say, I think it ran another third, and that was it.
And those dentist bills were probably Dave Scott's bills. Actually, they weren't the horse's bills. Is Dave still run that African Betting Clan?
He's still involved. He's got a partner, Bob, who I think runs most of it, but I think he's still involved. I haven't had contact with him in quite a while.
But Brent, you're lucky because, I mean, imagine if you were in ownership with Terry Payne and the dentist bills that you would have got then.
I mean, talking of Terry, I haven't seen him for a while, but I remember going to his 70th over a decade ago. So he must be 80 by now, yeah?
Yeah. We went to his 80th. Well, he's 82 now. Yeah, 82. No, he's great. We speak to him pretty much every second or third day.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's doing great. He's as hilarious as ever, I must say.
So Oracle Rugby, he's asking what you remember about IGN in 1999.
Yes,
I remember you had the spread betting show. That's where Super Saturday actually started, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
You used to phone the guys at maybe it was after IGN. I think it was the guys. I think they were called Super Spreads or something like that. So what do you remember about those days, Neil?
Sure. They were great days, and I gathered over a period of time some people around me who have, they've become wonderful broadcasters, commentators in their own right. So I brought on board the likes of Shaheen Shaw, those days, Shane Shaw, of course, Nico Kritsiotis. A lot of people will remember Terence Kirshner very well. All of those great guys, that started in racing. I mean, Andrew Bond was there from pretty much day dot. So IGN stood for International Gaming Network. It's the reason why I relocated from Cape Town to Johannesburg, was to start that IGN International Gaming Network. And you're right, out of that division of Mnet, as it was then, came cellular telephony. So MTN, as we know it, they were all in the same building. We were in the same group of offices. MTN, at the time, we were underbidders for the original lottery. And then you're right, spread betting came out of that. So those were good days. IGN, yeah. Going back a few years.
You recognize the names there. One of the Shrudies are backstage there at Betting World. Paul.
I see Paul's on there, yes. I want to know from Paul, and he can give us an update, because Paul's got a baby that is, I think, Paul, you can confirm, is either younger than on Elijah, but not much, or maybe a week or so older, because Elijah's 3 months now. He was born on the 3rd of January. So Paul is also like us. He's up because he's got young families to. He was telling me actually he was going to start breastfeeding Paul, but he said, but he said it was his nipples were chafing. So perhaps he's not.
Oh dear, Paul. Yeah, we'll see what he comes back to on that one. While we're on the topic of, he might just have rung off. But while we're on the topic of spread betting, I do want to ask you about one story. You told me the story years ago, and I just remember the Calcutta Cup between Scotland and England. You had a spread bet placed, and let's just say you were under a bit of pressure. Maybe you can set the scene for us there.
Well, my wife's probably going to hear this for the first time, but back in those days, I was probably punting 11 weeks and breastfeeding is going well, says Paul. There you go. How's yours going?
Wow.
Paul Hlohlo will share notes with you after the show. Yeah, so I was punting way too big, loose, which I don't do anymore and haven't done for some time. But back in those days, it was bad. It was just high risk stuff, and
but I can relate, Neil. Don't worry. I mean, I think we all go. And I'd like to say that I'm also a changed man now.
But in rugby can be a high scoring game. So if you're having 5,000 rand a point, that can be quite expensive. A converted try is 35,000. One way or another. So what had happened was I was in trouble. My account was in trouble, as it frequently was. And so I had to, in inverted commas, get out of it. So the one thing about me is I would do my statistical homework. So I went back into the history of the Calcutta Cup between England and Scotland, which had been played for a century, and looked at the total points in the game and had decided that I would go short, because being the Calcutta Cup, and it was the playing fields were level and the weather was bad, so I went low on total points, which I can't remember what it was. I suppose it would have been total points with both teams in the game, so it would have been up around 44, 45 points, something like that. And then I had a significant bet per point and then sat down to watch it. But the very first move of the game was a flowing backline movement from Scotland that they went over in the corner to score a try, and they'd been playing 40 seconds. So bearing in mind there was another 75 minutes to play, and I'd just done 35,000 because the kick went over. I went, as you know, I went into the toilet for another 74 minutes. And pretended. My kids kept knocking on the door. Are you okay, Dad? And I said, I've got a runny tummy. I got a runny tummy. Anyway, it actually ended well, because believe it or not, I came out of the loo with 2 minutes to play. And I should never have come out of the loo, actually, because at the time I came out of the loo, the score was 10-3, which was way below. So I was actually making money. But as I tuned in again, I saw 10-3. I thought, you beauty. As I tuned in, England went over for a try. So I should have stayed in the loo. It would have ended up 10-3, and I would have made quite a bit of money. I still made money, but it was then that I realized, probably in over my head, and I'm not enjoying the game. So the next match, I just doubled the bet.
But you say that about spread betting. I was exactly the same. I actually, spread betting in this country in the late 90s, you could bet. And I mean, spread betting, if you want to get a spread bet on these days, you honestly got to battle in South Africa. There's no real spread betting firms as such. So I went as far as opening up an offshore account. I funded it with pounds. And then I was betting. And also things went pretty well for quite a long time. I was making money, and all of a sudden, you have that one weekend where you watch 7 games of rugby in a row. And by the end, by the 5th or 6th game, you're so cranky and you're chasing your losses, and you're starting to fly those sort of bets that you're talking about now, where you're chasing your money. And every now and again, you will get out of it like you didn't, but sometimes you don't. And then you're forced to take a break. And for me, spread betting, I think it's something I might go back to at some point, but you've got to be so careful, because it's not like a fixed odds bet where you know what you're in for at the start. And these overseas firms, actually, they don't even have stop losses. So you might, in the old days, you could have at least a stop or a 40 or something on the other side. Here you go. Things can go crazy. And my favorite, of course, was the shirt numbers, which was pretty tough. But certainly, there's some roller coaster rides there.
Yeah, that shirt numbers was never my game. I always felt that I should have been in more control, so I wouldn't have that. Not that I was, but yeah, I mentioned Nico Kritsiotis earlier on, and those early days were quite interesting because Nico used to be flown down to Cape Town to work as a telephone operator for super spreads or whatever they were called. Can't even remember what they were. Super spreads?
Super spreads, I think.
Whatever it was. So interestingly, whenever I used to phone a bet on, frequently I used to get him on the other line. And I actually think that's probably where Nico began his nachos fame of putting the eyes on people's bets, because he will tell you could get Nico on the show. He will tell you of how I phoned and went high on Jaya Saria at 42. And as I put the bet on, the delivery was made and Jaya Saria nicked and went out. Boom. And he said, "Your bet's confirmed."
Oh,
sorry.
Dear. Sorry. Jeez. Yeah, there's nothing worse. I mean, even with spread bets, one time I was trying to get bets done. I didn't realize that I'd paused the TV. So I was about 3 minutes behind. So you think you're getting a great price, and then you realize there's actually been a try in the interim, and you've just jolly gone and sold. Paul Scooby asking there to explain your rationale around the Yankees. I'm assuming you'll know what he's getting at there.
Yeah. So a Yankee, people probably know, is 4 bets. It's 4. So let's bring it back to Premier League. So let's say you go for a weekend, and I've got a lot of friends and punters who will do this. You pick Liverpool to win if you think Liverpool will win. You pick Manchester City to win. You don't go for Spurs to win because they never win, right?
What?
But
why do you have to throw them under the bus at every turn?
Hlohlo's actually more of a Tottenham supporter than I am.
What's the question? So you're a bigger fan than Neil.
Yeah, well, she used to live up the road from White Hart Lane,
like walking distance.
Like walking distance, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so do we get sidetracked there?
You got to the first leg of the Yankee. You got 3 more to go.
The first leg of the Yankee. So you tip four guys. Let's throw in Spurs. You got Liverpool, Manchester City, Spurs, and Arsenal, right? Not that you'd have Spurs and Arsenal in the same one, but those are 11 bets because a Yankee works that there are 4 sides, but you get the doubles. So you get A with B, A with C, A with D, B with C, B with D, and C with D. That's 6. Then you get the trebles, A, B, C, A, B, D, B, C, D, and another one, A, C, D. And then you get the quad, which is all of them. So if all 4 arrive, right, then you're going to win all 11 bets. And if all 4 arrive, you end up winning a lot of money. I've used Liverpool and Manchester City, who in each of their cases would be very short price favorites. But imagine if you get a 4-to-1 shot, a 5-to-1 shot, a 6-to-1 shot, and a 22-to-10 shot, and they all win. So you're talking big money. So the reason why I like Yankees is because at the end of the day, you're backing your judgment. And if you are right, and if you are really accurate, and all 4 of your bets win, then you're going to hit the jackpot. So yeah, of course, the problem is if all 4 go missing, then you're in the poorhouse.
You lose all.
But I actually play. That's a Yankee 4. I like to play a Canadian actually, which is 5, and as a result, there's 26 bets. So if you work out the multiples, so there's more doubles, more trebles.
But when do you have time to do?
No, I don't anymore. This is all many years ago.
Yeah. Ooh. And the good news is the system does it for you. All you need to do is find the 5 bets, and you tick Canadian. And I mean, these days the online bookmaker systems, it'll put all 26 bets through for you straight away, which is nice.
Yeah. It's a bit of fun. I mean, it gives you a chance to play around. I mean, by and large, in a Yankee, if you'll lose money. If 2 of your 4 win, you'll probably lose money. Not too much. It depends on the prices. But as I say, the idea behind it is that I believe in punting. The more accurate you are, the more money you should win, and that allows you to do that.
Yeah,
because a lot of punters probably play too much, myself included. But if you go to the races, or if let's say in the Premier League, if you like 4 matches in the Premier League, you can get those 4 winners and you can still end up losing because meanwhile you've got money on Crystal Palace here, you've got money on Bayern Munich there, so you can get a little bit sidetracked. What a Yankee does is allows you, before they all start, to take that opinion, and then the bet is on, because Many punters can go to the races, back 4 winners, and still come home a loser.
So based on the Fantasy Premier League.
I knew it didn't take long for her to bring up this. You know this Fantasy Premier League thing? She's whipping our butts, everybody.
So I could have won quite a couple of Yankees then. Made a lot of money.
Yeah, and I keep telling you to punt.
But why didn't you tell me this?
Yeah, because we can only have one degenerate punter in the family.
I was going to say, I've got a feeling the roles are changing after the show, though. You're not going to be the degenerate anymore, Neil.
Well, there's no doubt, and I say this, and hopefully SuperSport aren't watching, but Hlohlo has way better knowledge of sport than me, Premier League included. So I will frequently say to her, who's that guy who plays for Everton or whatever the case would be? She was a football fan long before I met her, and knows certainly more about South African football than I would ever pretend to know.
Not as much anymore, huh?
Well, that happens when you have 28 children.
And a question here from Oracle Rugby. He says, no names necessary. I think I know the answer to this. Do the pundits ever have bets between themselves while off air in the studio?
Do the pundits ever have? Interestingly enough, I mean, obviously some, but
yes.
Apart from the one guy who you suggested a little bit earlier, I won't mention. Not really. I don't work with any punters. I mean, I'd say a couple of the British guys who come over like a bit of a bet. I mean, Tim Sherwood is always dabbling a little bit here and there. But by and large, I can't think of a punter on any sport really that I work with at SuperSport who is as interested as me. I mean, they're interested in what I'm doing frequently because they can marvel at that and then help me out with some change to get home. But
it was probably very different in the betting world studios. I think there we had a lot of bets.
Oh, yes.
That was very different.
Well, that's the other way around, isn't it? I can't think of anybody who works for Teletrack who doesn't have a bet.
Yes, exactly.
Cecil's not really a big better, but Cecil's another Tottenham supporter. So.
But I've got a question.
Yes.
Do people bet to make money or just the thrill of knowing that their knowledge is confirmed?
Good question. Ask Brent.
It is a good question. I think often both of them play a role. I mean, if you bet for many years, you need to try and make money because otherwise you will be down in the doldrums. But quite often it's a case of outsmarting the bookmaker. Neil, I don't know if you agree, but for me also, if you go back a decade, maybe 15 years, when online betting was really in its infancy, there were so many more opportunities to outsmart the bookmaker. Because I'll give you an example in cycling. You'd have cycling odds that would come out, and the guy was setting the prices he was a bookmaker. He wasn't a cycling fan. So he wouldn't realize that a certain stage would suit a certain rider. And you'd get a match bet that jumped out to you at 9 to 10 the pair. And you would take that. And yes, it was about the money, but it was more about your knowledge being better than the bookmaker's knowledge. What's happened now, though, is with all these feeds from overseas, I mean, the guys who set the prices, I mean, for the English football and the, all of the sports, they pretty much actuaries sitting there, working out prices and that sort of stuff. That sort of part of it is it's not, if I could say, easy is probably the wrong word, but there's just not as much opportunity, I don't believe, to make money out of the game as you used to. So maybe now it even does become more about your knowledge, because it's certainly, I mean, one of the reasons I started the Good for the Game website was I used to love writing about it and talking about it. And at the end of the day, often it wasn't about how much money I made, but it was about the fact that the tip arrived. I mean, my best bet mail that I still send out when there is sport on. But I mean, I went on some awful runs where I would lose 8 weeks in a row, but yet I'd still make money on the weekend. But I felt I almost would have given up that profit just to be able to place a winning bet in my newsletter. It's, it's bizarre. But you can't really explain the mindset, but it does work that way sometimes.
Yeah, no, it's a very complicated thing. I don't 100% understand it myself because some of it is the thrill. I think there's that great movie that Al Pacino's in when he describes it, and he says it's about the adrenaline rush. But as we mentioned earlier on, you need the. I'll tell you an interesting story that I feel, and I often say this to some of my punting friends, is that sometimes if you are losing during the day and then you get out of it in the last race or the second last race and you come home having broken square or even lost a little bit, but not as much as you were losing. That thrill is even more than the thrill of having gone there and won all day and come home and won some nice money. There's a bizarre sense of achievement that you were in trouble and got out of it. So what does that tell about the punter?
I actually cannot wrap my mind around that.
No, because you're not a punter.
But
Why?
You cannot explain that to a rational person, Neil. But a punter will understand you straight away. Like what you described there, I straight away relate to that. There's nothing better than, as you say, either getting out of it totally or even just halving the deficit, so to speak, in the towards the end. I mean, you go in all of a sudden the next week you're in a pretty good mood and stuff like that. And I remember Gary Lenton, obviously you remember from the show as well. I remember he always used to use the poker analogy. You had a guy with 500,000 chips and a guy with 100,000. The guy with 100,000 goes in and he beats the guy with the 500,000. Now he goes up to 200 and the 500's up to 400. But he says, who's got the better mind frame? It's the guy who's just doubled up from 100 to 200 because he's now had a win and he's doubled his chips. Whereas the guy who was on 500 is now being cut to 400 and he's lost and he's grumpy. And it's the same way with sports betting. It's all about that mindset. But there's nothing better than getting out of it. I mean, horse racing is known for, punters trying to get out of it in the last. I must say, I very seldom get out of it in the last when it comes to racing. But yeah, it's something I guess we all look for. Just to welcome another one of our punters. I haven't read his comment yet. Han de Mont, he wouldn't know how it would feel coming home after a day of all winning bets. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think any of us who bet a lot, it's very seldom, Neil, that you string the perfect day together.
Yeah, I've never had one. But that's the thing, isn't it? That's why you always have. Well, I say you never had. I've had my moments. I mean, I had a Yankee. Some of the people who might be watching will remember it. I took and you'll appreciate this. I took a Canadian we were talking about. Now, it was a Golf Canadian, and it was Golf Canadian is a match bet between two golfers. So let's say Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson are playing each other, and the bookmaker will price up just for that particular round. And in today's betting, I suppose Tiger Woods would be 8 to 10, and Phil Mickelson 12 to 10, something like that. But when the bookmaker puts in the price of a draw, it's normally about 8 to 1. So in other words, if they play the round and they both shoot level par 72, then it's a draw, and they quote you 8 to 1. So I fancied 5 matches that I thought were close, and I put a Yankee on, draw, 5 draws at 8 to 1 each. Yes, look at Brent's working out the odds. And they all won. Every single, well, when I say they all won, all 5 were a draw. So all 5 bets, I mean, folks will work that out. So you look at the multiple, 8 to 1 by 8 to 1 by 8 to 1 by 8 to 1 by 8 to 1. That was just the all to come, but obviously I got the doubles, the trebles. That was okay. I had a good day that day.
I mean, I haven't even been able to figure out the odds yet. I get stuck with 9 times 9 times 9, and then I'm gone. But that's a massive. Yeah. I mean, that's a massive win. Well, that's one that'll live in the memory.
The last time I spoke to my bookmaker as he was heading into retirement, he was also struggling to work out those odds.
Yeah, no, I'm sure, because I'm sure it hit every limit on you would normally have set. That's heavy. Let's talk about a couple of horses, and I want to jump. I'll come back to the others, but I want to jump to the last 2 on your list: Power King, and is it pronounced Liege? Liege,
yeah. Liege. Liege.
I believe you're not going to be the one telling the story on this.
Yeah, Hlohlo can tell you the story of
Which
Liege.
one?
Well,
that you backed it to win the July and it lost, and then it won something else.
Yeah. So you were talking about something you liked for 2 years. What was it you liked? The French. You liked the French yes. for 2 years. People will remember Liege. Liege is owned by Chris van Niekerk, and I liked him. Sean Terry. I had horses with Sean. Not that he tipped me horses. I don't get trainers to tip me horses anyway. But obviously, he was with a very good yard. Sean knows what he's doing. And I did mention to Sean about 18 months before the July, I said, you know what, your horse is a July kind of horse. He's going to, slip down the weights. And if he gets into the race, he'll get a big run. So anyway, I spent about 18 months or whatever it was. As soon as the betting came out, punting Liege at a big price. It was 100 to 1, 125 to 1 anti-post betting. Boom, 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 boom. And he was, to cut a long story short, he was, when they come out with the July log, so the top 20 win, he was about 25th. And then he had to run in the Jubilee, which is like a qualifying race. But if he won then, I think Pierre Stradham rode him. But anyway, we went to the race course. We must have had a runner or something on the day. I don't know what we were doing there. But anyway, we went there. Anyway, he ran a stinker. I have to say, Pierre, if you're watching, you'll remember it well because you didn't ride it particularly well. Thanks, Pierre. But anyway, bottom line is he ran 5th or 6th. I'm sure the horse probably wasn't at his best anyway. But he didn't get into the July. So, yeah, and that's nothing worse. So you spend quite a bit of money at finding what you think is going to be the right horse. Didn't get a run. But of course, what happened was he came out and he won the Summer Cup a year later at 40. I think he was 40 to 1 or something when the betting started. But, you know, to go back to the same well twice takes a lot of confidence and craziness. And I didn't. And so, yeah, it's one of those stories. The late Terence Kirshner used to tell me, he's right. If you have a horse, try and stick with it. And I lost faith with him, and he won the Summer Cup. He came up and won the big Summer Cup up here at a big price, and I got left behind.
You were very pale that day.
Yeah, because I said to Hlohlo about 3 months ago, I said, you know what, this horse Liege, you know,
yeah, I remember
he's going to come and stick us away and win the Summer Cup. So yeah, I was about 15 months too early on Liege, because it wasn't the same year. It was the next year. It wasn't
the next year.
It was the following year. Yeah.
And Power King.
Oh, Power King's a much better memory. Do you remember Power King?
July. Won the July. You shouted at home all the way. You were pale then too, but for good reason. Then.
That got me out.
And you lost your voice.
I did lost my voice. Yeah. So Power King, I mean, a great trainer, of course, Dean Cannemare. Great stock. His dad, Peter Cannemare, was a great trainer. Pound for pound, probably in the top 3 trainers in the country. And when he gets a good horse, you know, he knows how to win with them. As we know, he's trained many champions. But he was a horse that I also looked at. I must say that the older you get, the more knowledge perhaps you have and understanding of racing and handicapping. So I had earmarked Power King. He didn't have great legs. He didn't have great legs. So Dean always used to have to be very careful with him. But he got into the July on a very good handicap. And I spotted maybe again 9-10 months beforehand that if he does get a run, he's going to be a big runner. And so, yeah, these are the great stories when you spot a horse sort of 9-10 months before, and it happens in sport. If you can get, you would know if you know a cyclist who's going to do well in the Tour de France.
Do you remember when we were watching Parking win? We were actually about to leave before the big race.
Leave the planet, or was I going over?
No, leave the race course.
Yes, but I think you're right. But I think I was going to leave via the grandstand. I think I was going over the railing.
You were just not happy. We were just not happy that day.
Really?
No, because it wasn't a great racing day for us. And then we decided to stay just till that race, and then it was the best day ever.
I was going to say, then you didn't leave after that.
No.
Yeah. Just
in fact, I remember. Because Nico actually watched the race with me. Nico watched the race with me, and because you always think of Dean Cannemare or the Cannemare yard, and you think of Carl Nisius, and I started screaming at the 600 because I could see he was, you know, he had running in, and I started shouting, "Ride him, Carl! Ride him, Carl!" But of course, it wasn't Carl; it was Stuart Randolph. So Nico was sitting in his race car saying, "What's Neil shouting about?" He shouted, "Carl Nisius!" He says, "What's Carl Nisius riding?" And I was screaming him, "Go, Carl!" And eventually, after he said to me, "You know, it was Stuart Randolph." So I felt like a bit of a Burke for shouting Carl Nisius when it was Stuart Randolph, but I didn't really mind.
Just one of the guys on our website, he writes as couch critic on Twitter that he said, "I have to confess to you that during this time, I've still had to write my citizen article. So I've actually been having the odd bet on The Bachelor South Africa. That's how low I've stooped during the lockdown."
Oh, now you've done it, because Hlohlo, we said, has only had one bet on Japan. She is glued to The Bachelor. I can tell you now she's found out there's betting on The Bachelor.
Have you actually seen season 2's Bachelor?
Well, there's a mirror in the bathroom. I mean,
Yeah, no, he's not that impressive. He's not that impressive, eh?
No, he's great.
But the 10 ladies weren't bad.
He is like, wow, he's amazeballs.
So yeah, I mean, very small bets on those, I'll just tell you.
Yeah,
Sorry,
because
Neil.
but you can't, because it's all pre-recorded anyway, isn't it? So, I mean,
Yeah, but
somebody
You can
knows the
actually bet.
results.
You can actually bet on The Bachelor.
Yeah.
You can bet, so you
Wow.
can bet on you can bet. I know World Sports Betting had some odds. You could bet on who was going to be relegated. I mean, I think it's over tonight. We watch it on catch up. I only started watching it in the lockdown because I had nothing else to do. But you can bet on who's going to be eliminated and who's going to win. So you can get odds.
Okay.
Wow.
Because
Okay.
I think, as you say, it's all pre-recorded, but obviously they have to sign confidentiality. Having said that, I don't think a bookmaker would. You know, if Neil phoned up and said he wanted $500,000 on someone to get removed from the house, you're not going to get that sort of a bet on. You'll probably get a couple of hundred on or something, because at the moment a result is known, there's always the chance that there could be some.
We can have a word with our friend Jason, who's the anchor, because his kids go to the same school as us. So tomorrow morning,
Dude,
well,
you're
we're
not
not going to see
supposed to
tomorrow.
tell people that we're supposed to win this bet. Now you've just ruined it.
Yeah, it's gone now, man. I was hoping to get the WhatsApp. But Neil, here's a question for you that might spark something. Who is Nick Rule?
Oh.
There's two answers to that. Chloe will answer. You can answer honestly who Nick Rule is.
Well, it's not you.
No, not this time.
Nick Rule is one of Neil's very, very closest friends. They lived together in varsity.
Yeah.
But in the same breath, Nick Rule was your pseudonym.
Oh, you knew that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
so
okay.
that's why that person has answered that. So what happened was, as you say, when we had IGN and we started Superbet and Super Spreads and that stuff, because I was working there, I wasn't supposed to pay. So I opened up an account with Nick Rule's name. Now, Nick was a very good friend of mine.
Was he a cricketer, Neil? Was he a cricketer? Nick Rule?
No.
Okay, now I'm thinking of someone else.
No, he was literally an innocent bystander. Little did he know that he'd rung up over R1 million in debt. But anyway, that was another story. So what happened the one day, Nick came to my house and he said, yeah, this thing you involved, this super bets and super spreads thing. So I said, yeah. He said, it's interesting. I said, no, it's not that interesting. He said, no, it's interesting. I think I'm going to phone and open up an account. So I don't think you should, because you've already got one. And it was heavily in debt. So so I'm actually glad you mentioned that, because I mentioned when Nico used to answer the phone and he used to say, obviously he knew it was me, but he said, hello, Nick, how are you? Knowing full well that it wasn't Nick Rule at all. So Nick is now living in the UK, lives in London. And I think, fortunately for him, he never opened up a betting account with them.
Fortunately for him, he got out the country. They're probably still looking for him.
They are. Yeah.
And you were reminding me before the show, I'd forgotten about it, because we were talking the other day with I think Barney and Gary about the old famous Hansi Cronje test, and the thing that the leather jacket, and then all of the stuff that came out afterwards. And you actually testified at the commission.
Yeah, I was the first. I was the first witness at the King Commission, as it was. It was an interesting story because I was overseas at the time. I was on holiday on my own. I'd gone to go find myself, believe it or not, in Peru, of all places. So I'd just come down from somewhere between Machu Picchu and somewhere else Trujillo, I think, was a place that I'd been at. But anyway, I think I was in a hotel room in one of those, struggling to speak the language. And it was all Spanish, but Hansi's picture came up on the international news, and I was trying to figure out what on earth it was. And that's where I learned it, because I found someone whose English was patchy at best, but they said, this guy's been had up for illegal gambling. So I arrived back from Peru, and I'd be back like 48 hours when I got a phone call. And it's one of those phone calls, there's some famous stories. Mike de Kock will remember that famous story when Bridget Oppenheimer phoned him to ask Mike if he would train her horses for him. And of course, he thought this is one of his mates has set him up. So that was an interesting conversation. If you ever speak to Mike, he'll tell you what he told Bridget Oppenheimer, thinking it wasn't Bridget. Well, I was the same with Judge King. So I got a phone call, and it was, hi, Neil, I'm Edwin King. I think his name was Edwin. And
no, you think you're Edwin Cameron.
What was Judge King's first name?
Oh, I don't know.
Anyway, whatever his name was. But I obviously wasn't. Don't be ridiculous. I thought it was somebody. I thought it was Clyde Basil or somebody had phoned and set it up. But anyway, eventually, he confirmed that it was him and said that he needed somebody to explain to the King Commission what spread betting was all about, because he needed to understand what parameters Hansi and others might have been working in and around, and he didn't.
And he knew you knew Nick Rule, and he wanted you to get hold of Nick.
No, he actually, interestingly enough, had watched the original bet, which was called The Ruling Price, which was the forerunner, The Ruling Price. So yeah, so I got flown down, picked up in black limousines, rushed off, and gave my testimony. And the way I explained it to him, which was an interesting story, because I said, Judge, you can bet on anything. It doesn't matter. There can be a spread set on how long do you think my testimony will last. Will it last 1 hour? Do you want me here for 3 hours? You can make a spread, and anybody can take an opinion. So he said, give me an example. So I said, well, there was a bookmaker in the UK who had a spread called the THUD spread. THUD, THUD spread. He said, what's that? So I said, well, the Japanese emperor was on his deathbed, Emperor Tito, and they had a spread on how long you thought the emperor would stay alive. And it was called the THUD spread because it stood for Tito's hours until death. And so he was partly horrified and partly stunned by what I was telling him. But I said, that basically is spread betting. You can create any market. You can move it wherever you want. You can bet on some crazy stuff. So he then said to me, could you, for example, bet on how many runs would be scored by a certain test cricketer? And I said, of course you could. How many runs a bowler might go for in one particular over? Absolutely, you can bet on anything. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is amazing. I mean, some of the stuff some of those Pakistani guys and that were banned. I mean, a lot of those bets were not the sort of thing you're going to get your average bookmaker taking a bet on. You know, if you went in and told them you wanted money on a third ball being a no ball and put that, the second over. But there's I read some fascinating books on the whole black market around particularly the cricket betting and that. It makes for some fascinating reading. But I must tell you, I backed that famous leather jacket test. I was on England at 7-1, and I was patting myself on the back afterwards for spotting the value, only to find out years later that the fact that there was a result was actually contrived.
But I see somebody asking, I see Oracle Rugby asking there, which specific horse racing day have you most enjoyed and why? I don't know a specific answer for that, but what I will say is that frequently, and this has happened to me, is some of my big wins have actually been mistakes, where for whatever reason you put in the wrong number and a horse that's got absolutely no chance wins, and you think, I can't believe that is one. And then you look at your numbers, you think, what? I made a mistake. I actually had that in. So there's probably a lesson to be learned in that as well. So while you were spotting the value at 7-1 and congratulating yourself, it doesn't matter when the result's in the frame, as long as you got the right number.
I've made a lot of betting errors over the years, call them typos, whatever, where I bet on the wrong team or I've made a mistake. I can tell you, Neil, 90% of the time they go against me. It's so seldom that I've had one that goes in my favor. But when it does go in your favor, you just enjoy it, as you say, because you know that it's like anything in life, it's going to go for and against you.
So can I ask that question? Sorry, Brent, before you move on, I better answer Oracle Rugby's question. It's actually quite an easy answer for me, and it's the day Dunford won the Vodacom Durban July. And it's an interesting experience for me because I didn't own the horse. I had a few rand on, but not a big bet. But I watched it next to Robert Bloomberg, and it was Robert's horse. And although it wasn't my horse, the thrill of watching him win the race with Dunford. We were obviously on course at Grayville, and at the top of the straight, he was very well handicapped, Dunford, so he wasn't without a chance. Anton Marcus rode it, and Mike Bassett trained, and they did a very good job of getting him into the July off a good handicap. But as they turned for home, and we both had a set of binoculars on it, and I took the liberty, which you should never really do as a punter, of tapping Robert, and he said to me, "What?" And I said, "Matey, you're going to win the July." And he looked at me, he said, "You think?" I said, "I'm actually getting shivers thinking about it." And I said to him, he is traveling so well. And, Robert and I have been in the game for a long time, and he's a little bit older than me, but I think he respected me as being a race commentator and so forth. So at the 400, we just started screaming. He won the race, but the thrill of that was fantastic. So I never really had a lot of money to come on Dunford, and he wasn't my horse, but that was an amazing experience. So next to winning the Vodacom Durban July with my own horse, that will be my favorite race meeting for sure.
Well, see, Oracle Rugby's come up with something, because Oracle, I can tell you, goes to Grayville every year for the July. He's based out in Durban. He tipped his dentist, Dunford, after hearing Robert on TV. Well, that's interesting. So the dentist phones me every year asking for a tip.
He was 40 to 1, yeah. Yeah, well, there are very few people who know the game better than Robert Bloomberg, that's for sure. Because that's the great thing about racing, as opposed to, with all due respect to people who go to casinos. Casino, you got to take your chances. You can win money on blackjack, and you can win money on roulette. But racing has, form and so many multitudes of parameters that you can exercise your little grey cells.
And you can be my brother and sit in the casino for the whole
day. Let's not mention that.
Lose.
That's a family embarrassment. You can't mention that.
I haven't played
a gambling bug in your family.
I haven't played in the casino since my daughter was 6 months old. I gave it up. I realized I just had to give up casinos. Sports, I could still.
And she's 7 months this month, eh?
That's it. Yeah, it's almost been 3 weeks. But yeah, I mean, she's doing matric from home now. So I mean, but certainly, I agree with you fully. For me, sports and racing, there's just a lot more to it. And just quickly on poker, Neil. I mean, I know you used to enjoy your poker. Do you still have the odd poker night, or you haven't played in a few years?
No, I haven't played. I don't have the patience, I don't have the patience to play. I mean, I love the intellectual. You know what? I'm not a good poker player. Not a good player. A, because I don't have the patience, and also I'm intellectually challenged when it comes to some of these guys who,
like, how many outs you've got and all that sort of stuff. Yeah,
dude, they're on another planet, and I'm very blessed to have played with and against some of these guys who I marvel at. But I know my place, and it isn't at the poker table. So you can get lucky and so forth, but I have a great deal of admiration for someone like Gary, for example, who's streets clear of me and the poker thing. I enjoy playing it, but the one exercise that I did very, very well in poker is that to this day, apart from maybe the poker tournaments I used to have at home when you're talking 100 rand, to this day I've never paid to play poker. Yes. So I played it because God bless them, they were wonderful people. All Africa Poker and Kids Peak used to front me to play. So. And that's also a lot easier when you're playing with somebody else's money, but I enjoyed it immensely.
You actually got me fronted into the All Africa around that weight loss challenge, and they actually fronted me in as well. I think I came about 104.
And I have the money back. I need it. We're in lockdown.
But I was asking you one poker memory, which I always remember because I didn't play many tournaments. But Gary, by the way, sponsored me into one of the Emperor's ones not long ago. And he gave me a strategy, and I stuck to it perfectly. And I got to within the top 5 chip stacks about halfway through the tournament. But I'd never worked out the strategy for what to do when I got there. So I'd worked out this whole defensive strategy. Suddenly I doubled up with pocket aces, and I was suddenly right there. Half an hour later, I was on the rails, gone. Well, one of those professionals. Yeah. But the memory I want to tell you.
That sounds like Gary. He gave you the key, but it was to the wrong door.
Exactly. But Neil, I was telling you the one memory I have. You and I played in a tournament at Empress Palace. That Gary was one of Gary's tournaments, if I remember correctly. And he got us in there. We had a private bet about who would last the longest. I think we were staying in the same room there together, whatever. And we had the buy and the rebuy period finished at like 10 o'clock at night, and the freeze out started. And we all had chips in front of us, and we had add-ons and all the rest of it. So we were expecting the long haul. And I tapped you on the shoulder on the second hand, and I said, Neil, I'm out. I'd gone all in with pocket kings and ran into aces. You couldn't believe it. You thought I was joking. I was gone in the second hand.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, I can't tell you what Gary called you, but he said it was a no bet. I think you lost in 2 hands.
That is it.
I'm out. What when it started? I think I'd actually gone to the loo. I don't think I'd even had a hand.
I didn't played a hand yet. I was gone. But yeah, anyway, I think poker. Patience is really my problem. Just before we move on to a couple more horse racing, Lonely are the Brave asking, any tips for new punters? Neil, guys getting started? I mean, I guess the tip is really to do your homework and not just go bet blindly.
Yeah, you know what? I think you've got to have a feel for it. You've got to have a feel for it, and that feel comes and goes, and you can be wrong. What I will tell you is, and I'm still learning this, if you go on tilt, it's the worst time. You've got to walk away, and as difficult as that is, for whatever reason, and it can go against you. If you're on the race course, you get 3 horses that get beaten a short head, or your jockey that gets bogged for a run doesn't get there, or whatever. And then the temptation is to back to get out of it the next race. Then you don't. Then back. It can snowball. The key, and I'm still no good at it. I've been betting for many years, is to have discipline. So we all learn. Look, I'm a lot better now than I was back in the day, but you need to be disciplined. A disciplined punter. So if you're going, and I still don't, but there are some, someone like, I hope he doesn't mind me mentioning him, is Daryl Marie, who will have maybe 2, if you're lucky to have 2 best bets on a card. Often it's just 1. But the discipline is to, if it's in race 5, what are you busy punting races 1, 2, 3, and 4? Because every chance is, if you've gone to the track with 200 Rand, you're not going to have that 200 Rand by the time your horse arrives. So it's to have the discipline to have that bet, and maybe then on something that maybe is your second best bet, to have a lazy 100 or something, to not let it run free, but then go home. But not many punters can do that. It's difficult, and you end up chasing and punting horses that you shouldn't have been punting in the first place. And that's why I said to you early on, you can go to the course and you can back 3 winners. But the point is, you might give all your winnings back on the other 7 losers, and how does that help anybody? So yeah, exactly. It's tough. It's tough.
That is exactly the same with my newsletter. But I've often been on a good run of best bets. I've won 3, 4, 5, 6 in a row, but yet I haven't won on the weekend because, like you say, I haven't narrowed it down. And by the time you get to your best bet, sometimes I even get to my best bet and I'll actually take a different bet. So instead of betting on a total points like I wanted, I'll change my mind totally because I'm chasing. And I'll change my whole strategy. So I agree with you fully. I think that discipline is absolutely key.
Well, Hlohlo is probably in the best position because she gave me 5 Rand that morning of the Japan victory and got 13,800 Rand back for 5 Rand. So, and she hasn't had a bet since.
Quit while you're ahead. I've been telling you.
Yeah. So if we were all like her, we'd be in front.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, my wife's very much the same. One time she came to me, we were at Turfentine, and she said to me, put also, I think it was 5 Rand on some grey horse. It was 80 to 1. And I just turned to her, I said, listen, don't waste your money. We all know what happened. It won. And I've never ever been. And I had however much on, like a 6 to 10 shot that got rolled. I mean, it was ridiculous, but we've all been there. Oracle Rugby asked, away from the betting side, I think your favorite restaurant and holiday destination, guys.
I'll let Hlohlo answer that.
Italy.
Yes.
Oh, yes, Italy, yes.
Were you thinking something else?
No, I was hoping you were going to say Vegas because we've had to cancel all our tickets.
Yeah, shame. No, we were supposed to be going to Vegas. Because of COVID, we've cancelled our trip and are still trying to retrieve all the money that we spent on it. But for me, it has to be our Italy trip. I think that was a really great trip for us.
Yeah, we've been very blessed, actually. Look, this is, and you'll appreciate this, Brent, and so will Paul Scumby if he's still watching. Pre-young kids is a lot easier to move around, so we haven't had much opportunity to travel with Noah being 2 and Elijah being 3 months. But we did very early on in our relationship and marriage have the opportunity. We first went to France because my sister was living in France. So we went to Paris. Then we went, can we say the Garth Brooks story?
Yeah.
You'll actually be impressed with this because, again, Hlohlo and I met each other. We didn't know we were Tottenham fans. Independently, we found that out a couple of weeks later. But she, believe it or not, is also a Garth Brooks fan. So we actually took a trip to go see Garth Brooks because my late mom, lived in State College, Pennsylvania, and he was performing there for the first time in 17 years. So I said to my stepdad, listen, I'm going to come all the way to watch Garth Brooks. And that's what we did. I managed to get 2 tickets. It was another long story. How we got 2 tickets, I don't know, but we did. And so we flew in what was basically a 72-hour whirlwind trip to New York, where we watched Mary Chapin Carpenter live, and then we went by bus to State College and watched Garth Brooks in concert and flew home. It was a crazy 72 hours, but very well worth it.
Just quickly, another name. We're talking of Garth.
Who's having a bath?
No, what's your favorite restaurant?
Talking about Garth, recognize the name there. Garth Ridgway also came on Betting World with us. No, he's just saying he's been to Vegas once, but he's not in a rush to get there again. But personally, for me, I've never been. For me, it's I want my ashes scattered over there. You know, that I definitely would love to go to Vegas.
Yeah, no, Vegas is great. Well, we've got a lot of Voyager miles that are now owed us because we didn't get our refunds. So who knows? Maybe you can come with us. Do we have a favorite restaurant?
Dino's.
Oh yeah, we like Dino's. We like Dino's, which is a great little restaurant in Lone Hill. And we like to go there, so we always gravitate back there. He's a big football fan. He supports Leipzig. Is it? No, it's not Leipzig. I should know. I want to say Leipzig, but they're not that good. It's the Red Bull side. Salzburg. He's a Salzburg supporter. Yeah. So we enjoy going there. Manfred. Yeah. So we enjoy that. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, let's wrap things up with a couple more horses. Bronze Mystique.
I'm just looking Garth more into ballet now. Well, when I knew Garth, I mean, he was always involved in ballet. I mean, he did the old pas de trois once or twice, Garth. Yeah, it's good to see you, Garth, if you're watching. I miss you. I haven't seen him for years. But I hope everything's well with you. Bronze Mystique is a very, I don't know where you're getting these names from, but Bronze Mystique was probably my most, I've had a few embarrassing days in the commentary box, but this was one of them and is worth a quick story. So I got to the commentary box, it was at Durbanville, and I said to Jahan, I said, you know what, I'm going to change my commentary style. And he just said, what? So I said, I'm going to change my commentary style. I'm going to build it around Peter O'Sullivan, the great British commentator. So she said, what are you talking about? So I said, well, you know, he always used to say, so Ivor hits the rising ground and Nijinsky, you know, and here, and he's very slow. So I said, I'm going to do it in the first race. And there was a horse called Bronze Mystique that was 1-4, which is a very short price favorite. He was expected to win. Andrew Fortune riding it. It's trained by Peter Caname might have still been training at the time. Maybe it was Dean, but anyway, it was definitely the Caname yacht. And they turned for home, and Bronze Mystique, Fortune had gone to the front. And I was doing a wonderful rendition of Peter O'Sullivan, because what I'd done is Jahan was actually in the commentary box on the floor, doubled over in laughter, because all I said is, you don't have to commentate. So I had the commentary, I said, going in, and then just turned off the microphone. Then I said, one left to load. And that went all the way. I said, and racing. Bronze Mystique starts well, and Andrew Fortune gets an early lead. Anyway, we turned for home, and Bronze Mystique was 4 lengths clear. And I said, and Bronze Mystique now, the jockey just takes a look to his left, look to his right, and says, how many lengths? And Bronze Mystique responds now, stretching as they hit the rising ground. There was no rising ground at all at Durbanville, but I just thought I'd throw it in. As it hits the rising ground, And Andrew Fortune just says, let's go now. And he quickens away. He's gone 5 lengths clear. Now, at that time, I did see a horse coming on the outside, but I'd been kind of committed. So Jehan now was doubled over laughter because he could see a horse coming on the outside, but I didn't want to panic because it would ruin the whole effect. So I said, well, Bronze Mystique now, just easing down as they get to the line. He's probably going to win this by 2 lengths. And as they get to the line, that's close. He lost by a neck.
Jeez.
No, it was horrible. It was
I bet you were
horrible.
happy there's no social media in those days, Neil. You would have taken some.
No social media, and I don't think any television, although somebody I think had it on the thing, but Jehan didn't stop rafting for 2 days. He just said, "You're not going to do Peter O'Sullivan again, son," which I didn't.
Do you think that it was better when racing was not on television?
As a punter, definitely, because you could see things in commentaries, and if you went to the races, you would see things that would, you'd remember that horse was badly balked. But now that everybody's watching, everybody sees the same thing. It's exactly as Brent was saying. Everybody watches the Tour de France now, so it's very hard to find a 50-1 outsider that nobody else has found.
In my opinion, racing was so much better on radio than it is on television.
Well, radio is the theatre of the mind, isn't it?
So I always tell Neil this, that when I was growing up in Soweto, my grandfather had a general store, and during the week and over weekends, all the punters would go to Turffontein, put on their bets, and then they'd sit around the radio and listen to the races. And it kind of brought the community together. So the fathers were never away from their families because all the kids knew where their fathers were. They were just sitting around, around a radio, and if they needed them, they'd fetch them. And I think I miss those days because racing has become so elite that the common man doesn't get it anymore. They don't get it because it's on DSTV. They don't get it on radio anymore. So I long for those days because it brought people together. Well,
back in the day, it was the only form of gambling that was allowed. There were no casinos, no lotteries. Anybody who wanted a wager played racing. But we took your granddad, we took Pops to the races. He loved it, didn't we? Took him to Turffontein. I took him up to the commentary box and he sat and looked through the binoculars. They loved it. Yeah, it was good. The game's changed, that's for sure.
Yeah, I used to take my grand and grandfather to Kenilworth because they were both down in Cape Town. So whenever I went there, we'd go there. My grandfather loved it. He was also like your grandfather. I think stories that could fill a book. Not unfortunately, very few of them ended that well. I must tell you on the punting side, but he loved it. He used to take him to the track, and he used to be all smartly dressed, and we would stride in, and then all the guys would come running to us because we looked like owners, and like, oh, what's going to win? What's going to win? And he would just throw something out there, and invariably the thing landed. And we were going back to the car afterwards. People are patting him on the back and going crazy. But really great memories. I mean, I haven't been to the track for a long time, and it's something that I've been thinking I must actually do again soon because there's nothing like that experience of watching horses in the flesh.
Yeah. No. Well, when it's all back, and let's hope it does go to back, we must all go because it is enjoyable. There's no doubt about it. But I'm not much fun when I go to the race because I try to take it in my stride, but I generally find it very difficult to be, all things to all people. And if you're going to punt,
when you try to bet on 3 different centres at the same time, type of thing.
Yeah, plus the football. You're trying to get your soccer sixes on, your rugby bets on.
Yes, I remember you and your soccer sixes. And another racing name, Neil, Mark Anthony, and then I've just got one more horse to mention after that.
So Mark Anthony,
isn't he a singer?
Yeah, he was a singer. He married
J-Lo.
Yeah, but that's not it. This was named after Mark Antony and Cleopatra. So Mark Antony, it's actually a story I need to mention Robert again because I was pretty young at the time, but I was always, I first started punting, I was doing my own thing, but I always took a share of Robert's business. It had to be a small share because he was a big punter. So I think I started off taking 5% of whatever he was doing. But we liked a horse called Mark Antony. We spotted him as being a champion, or Robert in particular, obviously. And we, again, similar, spent 3 or 4 months taking doubles. Whenever we found a horse, double into Mark Antony for the Met, double into Mark Antony for the Met. And Met Day came. Well, he'd won. The thing was that he raced in the Queen's Plate first, and he beat Royal Chalice, who was the short price favourite. So I think Felix rode Royal Chalice, Mark Sutherland rode Mark Antony in the Queen's Plate, if I remember, and Mark Antony beat him, which made him pretty much a good thing for the
the
JMB
Mets.
Metas it was then that year, because I don't think Raw Chalice was in the race, and Felix got on it. Anyway, to cut a long story short, the horse won, and he hit the front at the top of the straight and won by 6-7 lengths. It was no contest. But I had to call the race. For SABC radio. So again, it was a little bit of, on this occasion, I did have a lot of money to come because I had a percentage of whatever Robert had, and Robert had a lot of money to come on it. So if you listen to the SABC commentary, you can hear from the 400, Robert hitting the commentary box window. Go Felix! So you don't really hear much of me commentating, apart from the fact that I also lost it, shouting that he'd gone 6-7 lengths clear. One horse race! And Robert was just going like this with his binoculars outside the commentary box. So that was also fun. And the more I think about it, actually, a lot of my good days of racing were always around Robert, because he's a fascinating character and just passionate, lovely. So Mark Anthony, we didn't have to worry too much that day. I think he won by 6-7 lengths. He beat a Port Elizabeth horse, actually, this Aldo Scribanti horse that flashed up for second. Can't remember what it was called. Somebody out there might remember it, but it was a PE horse that ran second. Whistling Wind or something, I want to say. Something like that. Good days.
Panic Mechanic was the other horse.
Panic Mechanic. So Panic Mechanic was a horse I owned. He was actually quite a decent horse. He won 4 races. And I went to Sun City, pretty much as we did the other day, and I had my older kids were with me. So we were in the Valley of the Waves and everything, and I came out, and I had about 8 missed calls, and I thought that was odd. 8 missed calls, why? And I said, oh, Panic Mechanic was running today, and 3 of the calls were from Nico. And so I said, oh, Nico's watched the race, he's phoned me, Panic Mechanic's won again. So I listened to the first message, ding ding. It was Nico. Nico said, Neil, Panic Mechanic died. That was it. Then the next message was, he had a heart attack in the middle of the race. Stone dead. And these were the 8 messages. So Panic Mechanic, God bless his soul. Mark Khan was riding him, and he was coming through to win I think it was 5th, 6th race. And the poor bugger had a heart attack and died.
Then you know your stuff.
Yeah, it was hard.
I think that's
So
Nico.
you broke up a bit there, didn't you?
Nico appearing there. I'm assuming that's Nico.
Oh, Nico's here.
Yes, there we go. He enjoyed the show. So
You're right. Yeah, because we're all sitting there. It's probably the good question.
We actually haven't thought of that before. It's like actually it threw us for a spin.
The real crux of the matter is why are all these sick people gathered here together to sit and what is wrong with you people?
Exactly.
It's a common illness. It's COVID.
Oh dear, that's for sure. But hey, Neil, last thing, man, give us a Terry Payne story or a voice before we end. Oh, Terry, I used to love your impersonations of Terry.
I don't even know where to start with Terry. I mean, he is still, to me, he's the funniest guy. To see him live, and I don't mean live on television, I mean just live.
In person.
In person, it's very hard to recreate unless it's on the spur of the moment. I've got so many stories, but some of them are probably not for this forum.
I remember 1 or 2 of them that you.
Well, I'll give you the latest, because this is a true story. I phoned him obviously because he's 82 now, Terry. Yeah. So we all know, that COVID in particular is dangerous for the older community, and not that I think it'll worry Terry. He'll outlive us all, but I generally speak to him, and I said to him, how are you doing? He said, matey, he says, when it first broke, and there was a social distancing and you had to wash your hands. I said, how's it going? He said, matey, he said, I'm washing everything. He said, I'm scrubbing everywhere. So he said, I'm scrubbing things I didn't even know I still had. So, but he's good, Terry, yeah. And then I said to him, but do you go shopping? He said, well, I drive up and I send Hilly into the shop. I said, hey, wash your hands when you come out.
Brilliant. Good. But my one memory, I think you'll remember this from the betting world show of Terry. The one day he gave a bet in one of the lower divisions or whatever that he thought, and it lost. And the next week you asked him about it, and he says, well, I didn't realize the game was under lights. They never play well under lights. And then you came to me and I said, I like to do my research before I bet, not afterwards. And I don't think he ever forgave me for that, because every time he saw me, he'd have a go at me for that one. So, yeah. Great memories.
Terry, brilliant.
But anyway, we thought we'd keep...
One of yours I was very nervous to meet.
Yeah.
Or Terry.
Yeah.
Well, we thought
I think they're best mates now, though, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Hey guys, thanks so much. We thought we'd keep it an hour, but there was just too much. It was just too much fun to be had and stories to be told there. So it was great chatting with you about all the betting memories. And certainly, if there are any more premonitions coming, let's hear about them before the game as well.
Yeah, I keep saying we're due for a premonition. We are due. Shish.
Excellent.
I'll let you know.
Please, and to the guys who joined us on Facebook and YouTube as well, thanks. The live comments always help to make the show, and of course the show will be available as a podcast afterwards as well. But thanks very much, Neil. Hang on after I disconnect. I just want to chat to you about something quickly, but I'll just disconnect the show. Thanks to everyone for watching, and thanks to Hlohlo and Neil. It was really a great show. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Brent. Thanks. Great chatting to you.
Cheers, everyone.